All right, good evening. Now, here's a little thought experiment. If you were to choose between a COVID vaccine and a COVID pill, most likely you choose the vaccine. Why? Because preventing the cause is superior to treating the symptoms. My name is Vivek, and I'm here to tell you that AviAI is the vaccine for the baggage mishandling problem, an $18 billion issue and the second biggest pain point for aviation industry. And here's the thing, the opportunity in front of us is incredible. Airlines incur huge losses because most software solutions are built on legacy infrastructure that lead to manual processes. And the aviation industry is ripe for disruption. And we are leading that way using data intelligence. Leveraging my own PhD research and years of technological innovation, our system predicts and prevents a baggage mishandling even before it happens. Our autonomous recommendation system ingests complex data sets from FAA and airlines to identify mishandling risks and then offers easy to follow solutions for baggage handlers to act upon. Now, not surprisingly, two of the biggest carriers on the planet are our customers. In fact, United is paying us to launch at three of the busiest hubs in the US. Similarly, Delta wants us to lead at Atlanta, which is also the busiest airport in the world. Both their CIOs are executive sponsors and champions within the company. What makes AviAI even more compelling is that United has already approved an annual subscription pricing of $1.5 million per airport, per airline. And we're starting with 3 hubs in the first year. Now, more broadly, you can see how incredible this opportunity is. For baggage mishandling market, it's worth about $12 billion, while overall operations software is north of $300 billion. Now, this is truly venture scale and ties in well together with our vision of being the default operating system of the aviation industry. All in all, our platform can save airlines up to $25 million every single year in an industry where software solutions are 7 times more sticky than any typical enterprise product. To top it off, our founding team has decades of direct executional experience in the AI space. Now, naturally, IPO is the goal, but our customer base and our traction makes us an attractive acquisition from bigwigs like Sita, Sabre, and Amadeus. In fact, we already had an acquisition offer from Sita. Now, Rome wasn't built in a day, and AviAI wasn't built alone. So here are the rock stars that are getting it done. My co-founders, Paul and Michael, are my PhD lab mates and some of the best engineering minds I've ever met. Rob, our ex-Adobe CIO, has built multiple businesses with 15 years of professional experience. Last but not the least, we are advised by an all-star team of veterans, both from the aviation and SaaS industries. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I look forward to your questions.
Can you describe more about the technology? What's in it? I mean, you talk about 24 years of AI, but AI is not that long. So
Exactly.
we changed the name of AI to something else now. So
exactly. So let me explain this a little bit better. The technology is based on something called as a self-driving systems. Now, most AI model that a lot of us come up with are manual driven, meaning a lot of interventions that scientists or engineers have to do to make it work. What makes this advantageous and completely unique is that it's completely autonomous, meaning that if something goes wrong, we don't need to have engineers come in and see what's wrong and then fix it. It self-heals itself, the network, and then proceeds on to make better policy changes eventually. Now, I'd like to highlight 3 things. This technology is based on something called as reinforcement learning, and there are 3 pillars for this to work: agents, policies, and states. And every single situation and context is different, as you may imagine, with every hub and every single baggage. We've built a module that automatically understands which input features a complex data set has higher weight and in which order. Again, trying to make it even more autonomous in terms of choosing the vectors that are required for such a prediction. So that's our unique advantage.
Is that baggage handling workflows at every airport different?
Yes, it is different.
Then you will not have the data advantage.
Baggage handling processes are different. However, we don't track or trace baggage. Our system is scalable because we depend and rely on baggage data. Now, baggage data is standardized by a protocol called IATA 753 resolution. Now, because it's standardized, the data that we use for United is the same as data that we use for Lufthansa and same for Delta, which is what makes it even more scalable to airports and airlines.
So when you said about the reinforcement learning, I get very kind of pumped up because are you suggesting that you have crossed the hurdle for transfer learning wherein you have to create the continuous learning pipeline so that it is a self-heal? That means we are getting into the uncharted territory of unsupervised learning. So explain to me as to how you managed to create the continuous learning pipeline when the objective is to assess risks from the data sets.
Exactly, that's a great question. So if you can think of it as a combination of supervised and unsupervised learning, because our models, the frameworks that we have are trained on big data, right? Now, the way this loop works is that any kind of adverse event, in which case the baggage is not saved, gets a feedback from the operators, goes into the systems, and then there are policy changes and configuration changes that are ordered depending on the situation, right? So different policies would enact different configurations. And depending on which situation the baggage operator gets a feedback in, it changes, the system changes on to reflect the newer policy that'll be able to save the bag. Will it actually save the bag in the next instance? Most likely, yes, but there is a non-zero probability that it will not. In that case, it gets feedback again and reverts back to another configuration for that exact same set of scenarios.
So you're not tracking the baggage, but how do you factor in the human element into this feedback cycle?
Exactly. So in order to make it as flawless and seamless, you have to lower the barrier of entry for baggage handlers. In fact, anecdotally, we actually go out to airports and hang out with baggage handlers, try to understand their plight and what works for them, right? So the web application that we've created right now is being used by operators at HQs who then convey the message, the instruction set, to baggage handlers. Eventually, however, all of these instruction set will be recorded onto the firmware of the baggage scanner that baggage handlers have in an easy to follow instruction set. So would one policy work for a set of baggage handlers as LAX that would not for IAH? Probably not. But the uniqueness is the system understands what scenario it's operating at, different hubs. Whatnot.
How does it work with the current way, which is they tag the bag, they scan it, and you track it? Where are you inserting yourself in there? And are you really connecting yourself to all IBM systems that they have? And how?
Yeah. So the way this kind of works is that in a way, we're siloed. We don't integrate onto the system. This is cloud only. So the only point of ingestion we need is the pipelines that feed us real-time data, right? So once that happens, everything else is owned by us. We have an end-to-end control over the web app, the front end, the back end, and the free system framework as well. So they access our technology through security protocols that we've set up for the operators to access it.
I'm still trying to figure out what the difference is between them tagging it, sending it, tracking it, and what you're doing.
So we augment. We don't change anything. We don't replace any tracking software or any module. We augment it, which is also why it's easier to get into the industry. Augmentative software is a lot easier than if you're replacing, let's say, an existing legacy software.
So how it works is still unclear to me. Like, I'm an operator in a room, and your software, what does it tell me? Does it tell me this baggage has a risk level of getting lost, this much probability? Is that the
So
information?
let's consider an example. Let's say you're flying from LAX to JFK and you have a connection at Chicago. It's a 30-minute connection. It's a pretty tight one, and most likely your baggage is not going to make it. Right? In that case, before you land at Chicago, AviAI platform tells operators that please extract your bag, Zephyr's bag, the moment your plane lands. So a baggage handler is assigned to do a search and rescue mission of your bag from the arriving plane and then drive it manually to the departing plane, right? So that way, when traditionally it would take 45 minutes to go into the baggage sorting system, now it would take about 7 to 8 minutes. Now, the process that I explained to you right now is something called as tail-to-tail mitigation schemes. So one of the schemes that we have developed with our partners, airline partners, of course, everybody has different operational systems, so we work with them to develop those things, not reinventing the wheel altogether.
It seems like a more deterministic system than a system that requires AI to me. It's an optimization problem.
It's non-deterministic in the sense that the correlation across, so if it's a linear system, let's say, for instance, if it's just tight connection.
Deterministic system can be non-linear.
Exactly. So heuristics is not indicative of what the prediction was going to be. We tried that, right? It's much easier to start with simpler models, not complicated. But the problem is dependency, linear dependency doesn't exist where baggage handling goes, right? So different airports have different variables, stochastic processes that are sort of built into and learned by the non-linear systems that we have.
If you are going in that direction, I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
Now, the number of baggages that get lost is order of magnitude less than the number of baggages that make it. So you have a very unbalanced data set, right?
Yep.
Your outliers, we are building something that is relying on outliers only. And how do you guarantee the performance?
That's an excellent question. In fact, very less percentage of baggages actually get mishandled. So extremely unbalanced classes, right? How do you manage it? Well, we have to look at the absolute data. In any given year, an airline loses about 1 million to even 3 million baggages. If you aggregate all those data points across the 5 years, that's 15 million adverse events. So what you do in this case, you downsample the other class, which is not mishandling, and then you upsample, or you sample it in the correct fashion, arranged fashion for the adverse event. So you balance the set already. So the absolute amount of data points needed for training is a lot higher if you consider that. So it doesn't create a problem for us in this case. It's similar to credit card fraud detection. The reason it kind of works right now is because there are so many transactions that even 1% of a billion transaction still going to give you a good, meaningful understanding of why credit card frauds happen. So similar to this.
Predict and prevent, how do you handle the false positives and false negatives in the context of your pricing strategy?
Pricing strategies?
Yes.
Yes. So the way our contract is set up, that it's a recommendation system. So we would predict and suggest the mitigation scheme, but we're not responsible if the baggage is not saved.
So this is not technically prevent.
It prevents, of course. But this is from a pricing perspective. We don't want to have any kind of adversity. In the case that some of the cases don't work out, some of the mitigation cases don't work out, which it will in a new airport. Yeah. We do not want to be liable for it. So the contract is set up in such a way that we're not liable for it. But we do prevent, yes.
All right, thank you very much.